And this is part 2 of the year-end brief right here on News9. In part 1, we discussed geopolitical leaders. We discussed big-scale 2025 news items. Let's pivot now beyond the rest of the world to India specifically, gentlemen. And let me bring your attention now to the best policy decision for India in 2025. And again, this seems to be a hard one. Options on your screen right now. What is the single best, according to the two gentlemen here, the single best policy decision for India in 2025? First up, sticking to purchasing Russian crude, even though India, after those sanctions, cut down on its import of Russian oil. But for a good part of the year, India continued to stand on its own feet and not give in to American pressure and continue to buy Russian oil. Pushing FTAs over larger globalization or deglobalization deals. So the FTA with UK has come through, and of course we are on the verge of stitching the FTA with the European Union, and of course stitching alliances, SEPA meetings, etc. that Prime Minister Modi as well as Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has been visiting countries and inviting leadership here in India. Next one are the tax reforms. First, the direct tax cut that Nirmala Sridharan presented in Budget 2025, and then the GST reforms that were announced in September. Or big tech investments. We've seen a flurry of those, haven't we? Right from Google setting up its data center in Andhra Pradesh, $235 billion of investment commitment by Amazon, and Microsoft's own $17.5 billion. So from a policy perspective, Sri, let's begin with you. The single best policy decision that you think has worked in favor of India?
My vote is for tax reforms, Kartik, because taxes are something which impacts every Aam Aadmi, right? Like you said, Finance Minister Nirmala Sridharan put money in the hands of Aam Aadmi when she cut taxes, personal income taxes. Right. Almost a trillion rupees was released. That's a hit the budget is, the government's balance sheet is taking. And then the subsequent GST reform, which again has brought down cost of food for so many people. Right. So to my mind, I think tax reforms are the biggest policy decision which has actually benefited and helped keep our growth going in the face of all the global onslaught we've seen in terms of tariffs. I wish the government are also focused more on ease of doing business, but I think we'll talk about that a little later when we talk about the risks. But taxes, we cannot underestimate the importance of taxes in terms of keeping the economy going. So my vote is very clearly for the tax reforms.
Tax reforms also come with the caveat of a rising fiscal deficit. So the government's own earning would technically substantially reduce because it's getting fewer taxes, collecting fewer taxes from both companies as well as citizens. And the second part closely linked to that is India's own economic growth. So even though we are a consumption-driven economy, which is where taxes will add to the consumption variable of the GDP equation, but you also see the government continues to do the heavy lifting when it comes to its own investments. And then aiding those investments technically would also be the foreign direct investment, which we've seen in form of big tech investments coming into India. Do you agree with Sri? Would tax reforms be the biggest?
I think tax reforms has a very strong domestic skew. But it's important, it's critical, and we've been waiting for the personal tax reforms right from the BJP era when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. Right. That was the first time they made the announcement that we'll, do exemptions till about 5 lakhs, then 10 lakhs. So it's important, and I'm happy it's been done. But I think the big tech investment has a global imperative and a global import on two counts. First and foremost, Donald Trump said the Indian economy is dead. Right. So in face of that dead comment, we have all the American companies in the big tech who do their homework pretty well, coming and lining up to India in the last quarter of this calendar and sizing up a total investment of about 68 to 70 billion dollars. And they're all coming on the merit of AI and India's new age economy. It's not like services economy. So there is a services part in AI as much there is manufacturing. So to that extent, it's a big takeaway for the year end, and it has import in the global context.
Big headlines for sure. Is it really
flashy
big
numbers?
Is it really
Let's
big
see
for
how much
India's
of it.
Economy?
Yeah. No, we need to see how much it actually gets invested, Kartik, because like what we've seen in the US also, a lot of companies have come and just to please President Trump, they made these massive announcements saying that we'll invest 100 billion, 500 billion. But how much of that has actually started trickling in? We don't know. So we need to wait and watch these might just be like all the politically correct, noises that these companies are making. Tax reforms, to my mind, is like immediate because it directly comes into impacts my wallet. And to your point about the fiscal deficit, if you see that India's inflation rate is very low, so there is room for government to step in and borrow if it wants to borrow. So I think tax reforms, to my mind, are probably the most defining, policy reform of this year.
All right, and I believe potentially, one item that we have not really discussed but is equally important is the fact that India is going ahead and stitching trade deals with practically every large economy in the world and doing it on the merit of its own export potential, on the back of its own MSMEs, on the back of its own agriculture sector, and on the back of large-scale steel and aluminium and cement industries. So, to my mind, that could be potentially one driving force, not just in 2025, but leading up with long-term ramifications over the next many years, because now you're not in a globalized world, like it or not. You are looking at bilateral trade deals, you are looking at free trade agreements, and those are likely to have a much longer lasting impact on India's export potential, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's a good pivot from doing deals from a block level to bilateral deals, because ultimately you need to be selective about what you give and take, or depending on the relative strengths of the economies. So I think bilateral deals are very, very important. And unless it's like a EU, because you can't do a bilateral deal with Germany or let's say Italy or France, for example. It has to be the EU bloc.
Right.
So other than that, I think it's a very wise move that we are now looking at bilateral FTAs, which will also protect India's interest and also give them access in the right way to the Indian market.
All right. So from India's interests and India's best policy decision, let's move on to potentially some of the misses that India has had in 2025. And I think it's fair to sort of discuss those as we step into 2026. So question number 7 on your screens now. India's biggest miss of 2025. Not creating enough manufacturing jobs. US trade deal not coming through. I think we've discussed enough of that. Let's eliminate it now in the context of this discussion. Air pollution, that is something which has been hounding us and impacting every living being, not just in Delhi NCR, but even cities like Bangalore that you spend a lot of your time in, and Bombay as well, right? Or AI skilling. I mean, the whole world is moving towards AI. We know for a fact that our IT services-oriented tech companies have missed the AI bus, and perhaps it wasn't their remit, but the fact that do we have enough AI-skilled people ready for employment, ready to take that leap into creating meaningful occupations for themselves? So these are the options on the screen. Rakesh, let me
to my mind, I've been clearly saying it over the last few months and over the last few years, air pollution. It has shown policy apathy.
Right.
As I keep saying, we could do a consensus on GST where revenues of states are concerned, and we're increasingly becoming federal in our approach when it comes to taxes and compliance. But here, when there's no revenue involved, it's only the citizen life. I'm unfortunately, I have to say that citizen life is not a great priority that we have seen in 2025. That was the case in 2024. Around this time, pollution, fog in Delhi, and this fog spreading to many more cities, the urban cities, and it has a socio-economic impact, it has a pure play economic impact. I think, this is a big miss, it's a big failure.
Shri, I was just running some numbers, and the average direct tax outgo for a resident of New Delhi is 1,80,000 rupees per year. Divide that by 12 months, you're talking about 15,000 rupees a month. That's 500 rupees a day. 500 rupees a day taxes paid to the government. You don't even get clean air in return.
So that's another question where I agree with, where there's consensus with Rakesh on, what is the biggest, miss of 2025. It has to be air pollution, Kartik. If you cannot give your people quality of air to breathe in, what are we giving them? There's absolutely nothing to then talk about, as a country that's aspiring to become, the fourth largest economy in the world. If you don't have clean air, this is a problem China had. Remember at the, 2025, 2020.
2000
Olympics, they had a massive problem, little small factories which are there, but they cleaned everything up. So why is it that India is not able to do that? And this is a problem we know happens every season, right?
Absolutely.
So we should have taken measures. We have to crack this problem with greater force than we have brought so far. Manufacturing jobs, Kartik, I believe that the nature of industry itself is changing. So I think it's probably not wise for us to expect that there'll be millions of manufacturing jobs going to,
It's going to be automated.
AI, I would not say is a
robotic
miss
arms.
yet, because we have the opportunity. We have the third largest pool of AI, ML, and software engineers, data scientists in the world. So I think there's an opportunity which still exists. US trade deal, we already discussed that. So I think that leaves us only with
on manufacturing, Kartik,
Yeah.
on manufacturing, I want to add, unless and until you do the back-end reforms, that's land acquisition and labor reforms. We've done partly the labor reforms whose impact is yet to be seen. It's still being decoded. If that doesn't happen, manufacturing jobs will not happen. Let's be real about it.
Right.
And our dependent on services economy is growing. And unfortunately, the data stares us in our face. The contribution of agriculture to GDP is falling or is stable. But the contribution of agriculture to livelihood is increasing. So, this paradox can only be solved by this manufacturing jobs.
Absolutely. Sure. But, on the point of air pollution, and again, we're recording this in December 2025, right? An average comparison between Delhi AQI and Beijing AQI. Right now, Delhi hovers in the range of about 400 to 500 on any given day. Beijing is in the range of 60 to 70. So that massive cleanup drive. But the point is,
and it manufactures many more cars, entire manufacturing base.
We're discussing this in December. Every year, October onwards, we start discussing pollution.
Exactly my point,
But come February, it's not going to make it to headlines. Even on our channels, we are not going to rake up this discussion.
Well, I think the policy apathy is seen as an infection which spreads all through.
All right, gentlemen, air pollution continues to be one of the issues that India has not been able to grapple with, no matter how many grab stages we put in place. But let's hope 2026 turns out to be better. With that, let's move on now to another question. And this one, again, is geopolitical in nature. The biggest geopolitical trend of 2025. Trend number 1, globalization is dead. Trend number 2, on your screen, tariffs can end wars. Trend number 3, crude is no longer king. We were talking about greenwashing, tech washing, sports washing. And question number 4, politicization of big tech technology. To your mind, Shri, which is the biggest geopolitical trend of 2025?
So, Kartik, if I were to rephrase one of this, I would say it's the weaponization of tariffs.
Weaponization
I'm
of
not
tariffs,
sure about,
okay.
Tariffs can end wars per se.
Taking Donald Trump's claim that tariffs have ended so many wars.
I would say that weaponization of tariff has to be the biggest geopolitical trend of 2025. And it's also linked to the slow death of globalization in some sense. So the tariff war is now going to accelerate what was already a slow unraveling of globalization. And now I think every country realizes that you can't entirely depend on other countries for your export needs. Rakesh mentioned rare earths earlier, but even for simple, let's say chips that go into car manufacturing, we saw what happened when COVID came and got disrupted, right? The entire supply chain was disrupted. And now China is using rare earth as a leverage against other countries. So I think weaponization of tariffs will probably be the most defining geopolitical development of 2025.
Is it going to become a trend? Are we likely to see more countries? Because Europe is also talking about tariffs. EU is talking about tariffs on Russia. EU is talking about potential tariffs on China. So do you believe that this is a trend which is going to catch on in 2026?
It's indeed a talk point which will sustain through 2026, maybe 2027 also. I think I would call it the Atmanirbhar movement, or that aspiration in every country is awakening by the second. Every country wants to first secure its own interests and then is getting into relationships which suit that particular interest. So there is globalization is not dead, it's being reimagined from the bilateral perspective and also the multilateral perspective. It's a move to minilaterals, a term that Jaishankar coined. So in that sense, India is, on the right path, but the problem with end of globalization is throwing up challenges which we haven't fathomed in the normal script. So we really don't know how it will fashion in 2026.
So just to add to that, Kartik, I think the premise of globalization was that you source products and raw materials from the companies that are most efficiently.
Yes,
exactly. So if I have to start duplicating what someone else does better, then it's a wastage of resource at my end. So while Atmanirbhar is a great aspiration for every country to have, not just India, but we have to see what it does to the limited scarce resources that we have as a nation, whether we're using those resources optimally is the question.
Absolutely.
I mean, the business case has to be there. That's why we'll see. We'll
Sure,
wait for,
I think competitive advantages are built for the world to
For
reap
everyone to prosper and thrive,
for the world to reap
benefit
dividends
of
off
everyone.
over
I mean,
time.
if
And those
inflation
get
goes beyond
impeded,
levels in America, we'll say that there was no business case for tariffs.
Absolutely. All right. So I think there is consensus that we are talking about tariffs, and we are talking about tariffs in the context of globalization. So hence, potentially two right answers to that question. And with that, we come to the penultimate question, and that question on your screens now. The biggest risk of 2026, where will that come from? A, will it come from US politics? Will it come from China's resurgence? Will it come from West Asian diffusion? Or will it come from climate change? Shri?
So, Kartik, I'm going to go with an item that's not on your menu list here.
Okay,
So,
you're playing a Rakesh on me. Go ahead.
So I'm going to go with AI bubble burst. From a purely financial valuation perspective, well, I'm a strong believer that AI as a technology will outlast this fear and hype over AI valuation. But if the valuations were to come down, because we are talking about 35 trillion of loss, as Geeta Gopinath wrote recently. So that's a huge hit to the global balance sheet of nations, especially US
Is
and
that going to
China.
hit in 2026? Do you think the AI bubble could, or is it going to become even bigger and more voluminous in 2026 before somebody comes and fixes it?
There are signs of some rationality setting in AI valuation. So I want to differentiate between the financial valuation of some AI companies from the technology itself. So I'm talking very specifically on the investment that's being made in AI. So the $500 billion investment that are being talked about, what happens if these investments actually don't yield a return that you require on such investment? So I think if this bubble were to burst, it'll have a cascading impact across the world. Don't forget that AI investment is essentially what kept the global growth going pretty much in the whole of 2024 and 2025. Otherwise, all the tariff war should have actually brought the global growth down. So if it hasn't, it's largely because of the massive investment we've seen in AI around the world. So that's my choice for an off-menu item.
All right, so there were 4 options, A, B, C, D. Shri just introduced option E. So let's discuss that option E. Investments, no doubt, big investments.
F,
there is... Okay, let's complete option E first. Let's add one more F there. But on option E, massive investments by the Magnificent Seven, by tech companies across the world into this sort of new animal called AI, which is slowly being unleashed on the whole world. Also reflecting in stock valuations on Wall Street. If it were to burst, is it a sort of financial market, capital market meltdown that we are looking at, which is going to take the entire world economy down?
Absolutely agree with Sri. I personally feel that AI is too much of a bubble already, both from an ideological perspective, from a valuation perspective, and I think we are overestimating, we're hallucinating, which is one of the problems of AI as such. So, but there is a context. If you look at, I'm a student of business history, if you look at companies' movement and their valuation and their strength, decadal view, for many decades it was the oil and energy which led. Then came technology. Then technology had 3 or 4 avatars. One of them is AI. So they move, they pivot. They're not there forever. So we should be ready to not get completely, so to say, mesmerized and saying that AI is going to change the world for best or for worse. I think we should factor in AI as a big invention of this particular era and bring in some caveats so that we minimize losses.
All right.
That's my view.
Add to that, Kartik, if let's say assume the AI bubble would have burst in 2026, then we are probably looking at a 2008 all over again.
Except of that.
A very vital difference that the US does not have the balance sheet room to again do a quantitative easing, because US debt is already approaching
27 trillion dollars.
I think it's 35. $35 trillion.
Yeah.
And it's already at an unsustainable level. So there's no room for US, which is the global growth engine, to print more money and pull everyone out of this morass.
So in case the AI bubble were indeed a bubble, and if it were to burst in 2026, do you think India is largely going to be insulated, like India was fairly well shielded even during the subprime crisis of 2008?
Well, financial markets have a strange way of rippling across and impacting everything. If not the AI stocks, we'll have the FPIs getting scared of investing in India, because every time there's a risk.
More money in India,
because that doesn't happen automatically, because the first reaction, Kartik, is always that you want to protect your capital. So what you do is at a
Go for
time when
gold.
the currency in India is also depreciating, you want to withdraw that and park it in sovereign bonds, like safer investments.
Right.
So that will be the first instinct for most global investors. So that may not actually help, work to India's advantage.
Right.
But AI per se, I think India is more insulated because we haven't made massive investments as such. But some of the announcements from Google, from Microsoft could, be impacted. That's why I was saying that, we'll wait and see how this plays out.
All right, so option E that you introduced now on the menu, but there's an option F on your screen now. I don't know what that is.
This is terrorism. It's at the cusp of geopolitics and geoeconomics.
Right.
The sad part is that it's a global phenomenon, as it was, but there was eyes closed to it. There was an Indian perspective, and India labored hard through decades to tell the world that it's a serious problem. Please take it seriously. Don't put it under the carpet. And Sydney is the latest example.
Absolutely.
I hope
and before Sydney,
pray.
you also had the National Guard in the US.
That's right.
Somewhere between these two incidents, you also had the 3 US soldiers killed on Syrian soil.
Absolutely.
So terrorism, and we know where that terrorism emanates from.
So 2026, we'll have to watch out for this. And I hope the world wakes up to the reality and doesn't really, get into semantics saying that no, this is X, this is Y. This is a serious problem which has both political, social, cultural, and economic challenges.
So terrorism option number F added on your screen, and I think we agree with that option as well. All right. With that, the final question on this edition of the year-end brief on your screens now. The most important question for India to answer in 2026. Rakesh, let me take it to you. This is home turf for you, pretty much, right? Can India sustain jobless growth? Can India contain the rupee slide? Can we balance Trump and Putin? And is India heading towards a single-party democracy?
Well, I would focus on the point number 1, because that, to my mind, because we're talking about domestic market, is the biggest challenge. Whether we are able to balance between Trump and Putin, they would be very difficult to draw a verdict on that at the end of the year 2026. But they both will play, and India will try and woo both of them, and both will try to woo India, as has been the case. But I think, the youth demographic dividend turning into a liability, that risk is
demographic disadvantage.
Liability, we call it. I mean, if not a disadvantage, I'm taking it even further, it's a liability. In that sense, if we're not able to bring about a massive policy change, which is a radical shift from where we are today, then I think the restlessness of youth is going to hurt us all significantly.
Restlessness of the youth in an era where we are at best able to create gig jobs, where at best we are able to provide employment, and that's the opportunity cost. We are only able to create riders delivering 10-minute deliveries in, quick commerce is pretty much the only jobs that we've been able to create in 2025. Is that going to be something which will become over time a challenge for India?
So, Kartik, the linchpin for our Viksit Bharat vision of 2047 is basically growth. As an economy, we have to grow at 8.5% if we have to hit the target of becoming a developed, nation with a per capita income that qualifies us to be in that league. So I think growth has to be the single most important question. Rupee slide, I think it's a function of dollar inflows. Not too worried about it. It'll hurt us on the import side, but also benefit us on the export side. Trump Putin is a geopolitical thing where the Aam Aadmi here is not really losing sleep over. Single party democracy, I think, is literally a non-issue in the absence of any party which can actually do what the BJP government is doing right now. And it's like we're seeing it state after state. Right. So I don't think that's really an issue as well. The single most important is the economy stupid.
All right.
Like, can we march on towards our vision of a Viksit Bharat by 2047? How do we do that if we can't keep our growth at 8.5%? So that's the key issue to my mind.
All right. So I think we agree that we need growth.
Absolutely.
No matter what the cost may be, the short-term cost.
Whatever it takes.
Over time, whatever it takes. But on option D, Rakesh, I want to end with that. A single-party democracy may be too lofty a term to use right now, but the fact that the opposition is pretty much absent in policy making, the opposition is pretty much made defunct, not just in the House of Parliament, but also on social media and also in overall public opinion. Is this something, India not having a strong opposition, is this something that is going to hurt India long term?
Well, in a democratic framework, Kartik, we need as many voices as are welcome. And I don't agree with you that we have, opposition stifled. They have a representation in the parliament. They've stalled parliament for, session after session. So they've been successful if that is their core objective. And then, look at the appointment of information commissioners, CBI directors. We have the leader of the opposition, which was not the case before 2014.
Right.
So in that sense, more and more institutions are getting that institutional framework. We can do with much more democracy as a theoretical framework. But if opposition is losing the steam, you can't blame the winning party.
No, it's not a blame game here.
I'm
The
just
question
saying,
is, does India need a stronger
No, there is
opposition?
stronger in the sense what? I mean, stronger, there is no barometer to it, Kartik. There is room to protest, that's happening on the floor of the house. There is room to protest on the street, that's happening. And it's not that every election is going in a particular direction. There is a Congress government in Karnataka, there's a West Bengal government. We have a case of some very strong states run by the opposition, which is a very healthy thing. I, for one, have been advocating in my writings and in my speaking, assignment that we need strong states and strong center. It does not mean that each state is run by BJP.
Absolutely.
We want
So
more
strong states, strong center, and definitely strong independent institutions.
So Kartik, if I were to give a slightly different take to this, your question on single party democracy, I would say it's the Revdi politics, which probably is the single biggest threat to Indian political system and Indian
I agree with Sri.
economy.
Yeah.
I think we have to discourage this entire, practice of giving sops to voters to win elections. I think that we have to, put an end to, because ultimately it's a race to the bottom. It's a cost that will come back to you and me as taxpayers and our children.
Absolutely.
We are basically mortgaging the future of our children to, get into a government or elect governments today. So I think we need to understand that. So more than a single party democracy, I think India needs a responsible democracy, responsible governance, whether it's from BJP or from Congress or any other party.
Absolutely.
We need
so with
electoral
great
reforms.
power, with great political power,
absolutely.
what we need is great responsibility. Yes. Well, gentlemen, on that note, thank you so much and wishing you a happy new year.
Thank you,
a happy
Kartik.
2026.
Thank you, Kartik.
And we come to the end of the year-end edition of the Weekly Brief. Thank you so much for watching, and through 2026, do stay tuned in to News9.